If you're only looking for a program that you can just click the link and download it and then never do anything with it ever again, then this is not the video for you. But if you want to learn how to create a simple workout program for yourself, then this is the video for you. In this video, I'm going to walk you through a simple step-by-step guide to build your own workout program, and definitely geared more towards beginners. So for those of you that are just starting out, or maybe are about to just start out, or for those of you that have been trying it on your own for maybe a handful of months or less than a year, then this is specifically for you. My name is Jonathan Orlando, and I created the Fitness Academy to teach people like you exactly how to be independent with exercising, so you no longer need my help nor anyone else's help for the rest of your life. Now, if you want to make the most out of this video, you should follow along as we build the program together, and I just so happen to have a link to a web app that will help you create the whole thing extremely easily. So pause the video, click the link in the description, and pull up the program builder so we can get into this together. Now, I'm not going to do a deep dive into all the science behind everything and the decisions we're making and the choices we're making, because that's not the purpose of this video. And honestly, you don't need to know all the science in order to start making your own choices. What you do need is a simple process and a clear understanding of the options in front of you. So throughout this video, I'm going to give you different choices and explain the differences between them so you can make an informed decision for yourself. So with all that being said, let's get into the very first step. All right, so we have the program builder pulled up, and now we're getting right into the very first step. First step that you can see here is naming your program. The default here is my training program, but you can put whatever you want. I'll just leave it as my training program. We'll go my first training program. The very first choice that we have to make is how long the program is going to be. Now with this is entirely personal preference. It really doesn't matter if you pick 8 weeks or 12 weeks. It's kind of up to you and how long we want to be with the same set of exercises. So again, completely up to you, 8 or 12 weeks. I will go for the 12-week side. There's a bunch of options in here that we can change to make it appropriate for someone that's been doing this a little bit longer, but ultimately, I will kind of give you an example of what it would look like for a complete beginner. We'll click the 12 weeks one and continue. From there, we have the training frequency. So how many days per week are we going to train? And this is another one where it's definitely mostly personal preference, depending on your schedule, depending on, your ability to get to the gym, all these other factors that kind of come in with your individual schedule. So you can kind of pick which one works best for you. Now, my recommendation is definitely to be around 2 or 3 days. The minimum is at least 2 days per week. The maximum, 4 days per week. Obviously, you could work out more days than that. But again, if you're just starting out, I would stick between the 2 to 3 range. So for our case here, I'm going to pick the 3 days per week, and then we'll continue to the next step. So from there, we have the workout volume. How many exercises per workout do we want to have? Now, one thing to keep in mind with this, and this is the total amount of exercises that we're going to do. Now, the general recommendation is to have this somewhere around 3 to 4 exercises per workout day. Now, I want to show you guys one thing. If you picked 2 days per week, you can't pick 3 exercises per day because there is kind of a minimum of amounts of total work that we want to do for it to actually be productive. So if we're only exercising 2 times a week and you're only doing 3 exercises per day, that's kind of on the low side. Even for someone that's just starting out, ideally we'd want it to have at least 4 exercises if we're only working out 2 days per week. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that we can't get anywhere if we're only doing 2 days and 3 exercises. It's just a bit better to have 4 exercises if we're only doing 2 days per week. So we'll go back. Initial selection. Now, in this case, I'm going to pick 4 exercises per day. Again, it is kind of completely up to you. It can be 3. It can be higher to the 5 side. If you're just starting out, 3 to 4 is probably a good spot, one of those two. Then we come into the movement categories, and these are categories that I put different movement types in to make it easy to decide what exercises we're going to have in the program itself. So if we take a look, the very first one is a squatting type movement, and this is basically standing up from a seated position. So any type of squat type motion. So you can think of stuff like barbell squats, lunges, step ups, goblet squats, anything like that, anything where it's a squatting type motion, whether it's single legged or double legged, that kind of falls into the squatting category. Then we have the deadlifting category, and this is a hip dominant movement. And this refers to basically anything where we're picking something up off of the ground. So we have barbell deadlifts, kettlebell deadlifts, single leg versions, so single leg RDLs, two-legged RDLs, all sorts of stuff like that. Anything where we're picking something up off of the ground or we're bending over and coming back up. Then we have the pushing category, and this is any exercise where we're pushing something away from you, whether we're pushing horizontally or pushing vertically above your head. All right, that's what refers to for the push category. And then the pulling category is the exact opposite. Anything where we're pulling something in front of you, horizontal pulling motion, and then the vertical pulling motion, pulling from above your head. And the categories that fall into these types of stuff is stuff like a bench press, a dumbbell bench press, overhead press motion, machine versions of those two, machine chest press, machine shoulder press, all these types of things fall into the push. And then the pull, we have stuff like barbell rows, pull-ups, cable rows, machine rows, all sorts of stuff like that. Lat pull downs is another one, vertical pulling from above your head. Those are the types of things that kind of fit into those categories. And we don't need anything that's super, super fancy. Honestly, the simpler the exercise, the better it is, especially if you're just starting out. Now, one thing you can notice from here is that we are not doing any type of isolation exercise. So stuff like bicep curls or lateral raises for the shoulders or smaller exercises like that. Main reason being is that it's just way more time consuming. We can get a lot more work done keeping all of our exercises compound exercises, so exercises that use multiple muscle groups at the same time, as opposed to having a bunch of smaller bicep curl type exercises or leg extensions or stuff like that. Now, that's not to say those exercises aren't good and they have their place, but if we want to be efficient with our time in the gym, the compound exercises are going to be way better because we can just do way more within the same given period of time. And again, especially for beginners, this is the side I would kind of lean on because it, again, gets the most done in the shortest amount of time. So from here, we have the movement categories, and we'll move on to the next step, which is the movement frequency. So how often are we seeing a squatting type exercise? How often are we seeing a deadlifting type exercise? How often are we seeing a pushing exercise? And how often are we seeing a pulling exercise? Now, there is minimums within this step. So you can see for the squats, the minimum is 2, and for the pushes, it's the same thing. They're just split between the horizontal and vertical. So the reason why we want at least 2 exposures of a given movement type across the week is because we want to have at least 6 sets of a given exercise for it to actually be enough to make progress, to see results. So strength results, muscle gain results, whatever the goal is, we want to at least have 6 sets. So that means we want to at least see the exercise or the exercise category twice throughout the week. And it's set already for that to be the minimum. Now you can see here, we have 4 extras that we can fill in to what we want to maybe focus on more. And that's kind of where your choice is going to come in. What do we want to emphasize more than other things? So for an example, if I was someone that really wanted to emphasize more on the lower body stuff, then we can just add an extra day of seeing a squatting type movement or a deadlifting type movement. So now we have 3 across the week for each of them compared to the minimum 2. And then we can put the other 2 in whatever else that we kind of want to focus on. So this is really where you guys can kind of mess around with where you want to have the focus of your program being. And then the opposite, if we wanted to maybe focus on the pushing type exercises, so stuff like the bench press, the overhead press, stuff like that, then we can add extra ones over there. Or maybe we want to focus on mostly upper body stuff. Then we can definitely add more to both the push and the pull. And this kind of way, you can see here, has kind of an even spread between the different categories, but still emphasizes more on the upper body, because the total upper body we have is 4 pushing, 4 pulling, 8 total upper body stuff versus only 4 lower body exercises. So it's just important to kind of think of it in that way, so you guys can make the best decision for yourself. So all depending on your goal and what you kind of want to do. For our purposes here, we'll say that we want an extra squat, and then maybe we want an extra horizontal pressing, an extra bench pressing type exercise, and then maybe an extra pulling exercise, vertical pulling for pull-ups. And then maybe for this last one, we'll say that we really want to focus on the horizontal pushing stuff or bench press type exercises. So I'll put an extra one in that slot. All right. And that's the same kind of thought process you guys can use to help figure out what you want your program to look like. Once we have that all figured out, we'll move on to the next step. And here we have the exercise selection. So this is another part where it's probably going to be the hardest to kind of figure out where you want things or what things you want to do in your program. So if you have a bit more experience, you can kind of go down and pick whichever ones you want them to be. I put a lot of different options on here. Obviously, these aren't all the exercises in the world that you could possibly do for each of these categories, but these are the most basic ones, the simplest ones, the ones that if you're just starting out, you should probably focus on. So you have a bunch of options depending on how many movement types you decided on. So I picked 3 different squats, which is why we have 3 slots, and I only put 1 vertical press, which is why there's only 1 option. Now you can see this button here, we have pick for me, and this is specifically for beginners that maybe have not done anything in the gym whatsoever, or maybe literally just starting out a couple weeks or a month or 2 into their fitness journey. If you're unsure of what exercises would work best for you, I would recommend clicking this button, and it will preload all the exercise choices with ones that I think beginners should focus on in the very beginning, to make it as easy as possible for you to get started with the fitness journey. Each one has their own defaults. You can see everything is already loaded in here. We have the goblet squats, step ups, leg press, the kettlebell deadlifts, dumbbell RDLs, all sorts of different exercises. And if you don't know what some of these exercises are, well, I just so happen to be putting out exercise videos on a weekly basis covering a lot of these basic exercises. And if I don't have a video out on the specific one that you want to look at just yet, then there's probably dozens, probably even hundreds of other people that have put videos out about the exercise that you're looking for. So you can just type it on YouTube and Google, and you can probably get or find a really good video to help you figure out how to do the thing. Once you have figured out what exercises you want to do, the next thing is the weekly organization. And this is how everything is organized for each day across the week. What exercises are on which day, and which order all these exercises appear. Now, this does make a difference. We're not going to go into a lot of detail behind how much of a difference or the difference that some of this stuff makes. And I made it super easy for you guys because the defaulted way it comes out without you having to touch anything is already the kind of way that I would do this for myself. Or if I was making a specific program for somebody, this is kind of the way that I would have it. And if we take a look, we can see that if we have a squatting type exercise or a leg exercise in general, it's going to be separated. So we don't want the 2 leg exercises to be close to each other or back to back, because one will definitely take away from the other. So if we can separate them, well, now we have a bit of a break before we do another leg exercise. Now, it's not the end of the world if they are back to back. I just like to have these things separated within the day and then also separated throughout the week. So that way, each time that you do a leg exercise or each time that you do an upper body exercise, you can ideally perform to the best of your ability because you weren't just doing the similar exercise right before it or right after it. All right. If you guys just want to leave it at default, you can not touch this whatsoever and continue on to the next step. If you are picky about what exercise you see on a certain day, or if you like to do the similar exercises on the same day, so all leg exercise on one day, all upper body exercise on the other day, you can reorder these to make that happen just by switching the days around, and then we can also grab it and move whatever exercise into whatever order on a given day. All right, so you guys have a lot of flexibility. If you're not sure or don't really know, I would say to just leave it at the default because it's already set up in a pretty good way. Then continuing on, we have the repetition scheme. So how many reps are we gonna do for each of the exercises? A couple options that you guys have here: 5 reps, 8 reps, and 10 reps. So these are kind of the options that you have. Why 5, 8, and 10? Just because. It could be 4, 7, and 9. It could be 6, 11, and 14. The exact number really doesn't matter. But one thing that we can keep in mind, because the reps do matter to a certain degree, and that is dependent on the goal that we have. So if we have maybe more strength-oriented goals, it's probably better to keep the reps on the lower side, so around the 5 reps per exercise or per set. Whereas the opposite, if we have more muscle building type goals, then we can have the reps be on the higher side, so closer to the 10 rep side. Now, that's not to say if we choose the lower reps, we're not going to build any muscle, or if we choose the higher reps, we're not going to get any stronger. Regardless of the amount of reps you pick, you're still going to get both. You're still going to get build muscle and get stronger. The only difference is which way it's skewed. Because we can skew more towards strength outcomes by having things lower reps, or skew more towards hypertrophy or muscle building outcomes by having the reps higher. Okay? So again, still getting both results. This just matters which one we're emphasizing on. And then beyond the goal that you specifically have, if we have a preference of the weights that we're using. So obviously, if the reps are higher, the weight is going to be lower. And if the reps are lower, the weight is going to be heavier if we want it to be hard enough to actually get better. Now, you could do lower reps and lower weight, but that probably won't get you anywhere because it simply won't be hard enough for you to actually make improvements. All right, super important to keep in mind. So you guys can pick 8 reps across the whole thing by clicking the button at the top, and this applies to all the exercises. We can make everything 5, we can make everything 10. We can split it up if we want day 1 exercises to be 5 reps, day 2 exercises to be 8 reps, and day 3 exercises to be 10 reps. We can split it up that way, and that's a perfectly fine way. We can go through each exercise and say, for the goblet squats, I want them to be 10, but for the dumbbell bench press, I'll leave it at 5. The cable rows will go to 8, and then the machine chest press will also stay at 5. We can have it to where we're doing 10 reps on the kettlebell deadlifts, but only 8 reps on the barbell overhead press. 10 reps on the step-ups, 5 reps on the lat pull-down. Again, you can go through it one by one like that if you want to. It's completely up to you. The difference that it's going to make, especially if you're just starting out, is negligible. So don't stress about it too much. Just pick an option and stick with it. So for our purposes, I'll keep it super simple and just have everything to 8 reps. We will continue, and then the next is the set progression preview. Here you guys don't have any choice because this is where programming can get super complicated with figuring out how many sets we're going to do, how those sets are progressing throughout the week, so on, so on, and so on. So I set this up, again, geared more towards beginners or people that are kind of just getting started with all this stuff. In the beginning, the sets will be at 3 sets per exercise, and then they will eventually increase to 4 sets later on throughout the program. So the only thing you guys have to pay attention to is when each week comes, double check the amount of sets that we're supposed to be doing on that particular week. Now that we kind of went over how the sets are going to progress, we can click generate the program, and it generates the full thing for you. So we have all 12 weeks with all the exercises already on here. Again, this is a simple exercise program, so it's not too complicated. Now, one thing we didn't go over is how difficult do we want each of these sets to feel? This is another part where things can become super complicated with programming when we're trying to figure out how hard all of this stuff is supposed to feel. But for your purposes, especially if you're just starting out, we can follow this tip right here. So the difficulty for each set of each exercise, it should feel like you could do 2 or 3 more reps by the time you get to the last rep. So if we're doing 5 reps, by the 5th rep, it should feel like you could do maybe 2 or 3 more reps if you had to keep going, but we're not going to actually keep going. It's just a way to gauge how hard it was for you in the moment of doing it. Same thing if we're going to 8 reps. It's 2 to 3 more reps that you could have done by the time you got to that 8th rep. Or 10 reps, same exact concept, all right? And this is just an easy way where we could just make all the sets of all the exercises around this type of difficulty, and it definitely will be strong or hard enough for you to actually get better. Then, once we have all of that, the program's here, everything is set up, we can do a quick overview if we want to. Then we can click the Save as PDF, and then this brings us into a nice little output format where you guys can either save it to your computer, save it to your phone, or if you're doing this on your computer, you can print it out straight like this if you want a physical copy. Again, that part's kind of up to you. Doesn't really matter how you have it. We just want it in some way. So now you have your very own program put together and you can start using it as soon as possible. Do not wait till next week to start. Do not wait till next month to start. Start either today or tomorrow. I highly recommend saving this video so you can come back to it anytime you need to put together a simple program for yourself. Or if you want to help a friend put together a program for themselves. Now, for those of you that want to take the next step into learning how to make good decisions within the program itself, like how to gauge difficulty, how to decide when to go up or down in the weights, how to make adjustments to the program that we just created, depending on how things are actually going for you. If that sounds like something that you would want to learn, click the link below for the Skills to Independence webinar, because in that video, I go over all the skills someone needs to know in order to be successful with following any kind of workout plan. Plus, a deeper dive into the first and most important skill, because having a workout plan is only one part of the equation. How to actually implement the plan, make adjustments, and make good decisions within it is the other part of the equation that a lot of people tend to miss out on. Also, subscribe to the channel because I'm going to be putting out a lot more videos just like this one to help you become independent in the gym for life. And comment below if you have any questions about the program that you just put together, or if you get stuck on a certain step in the program builder and can't decide which option to pick. Ask in the comments below and I'll do my best to help you figure out what makes the most sense for you. So, with all that being said, I hope you guys make good use of the program, and then I'll see you in whatever video you click on next.